Hello everyone. Today I'm going to address the question of if it is possible to live off of just one income so that perhaps the wife can stay at home with the kids and help raise them, maybe homeschool them, and the husband can go off to work and provide for the family. It sounds like a lovely traditionalist view, but is that outdated? I know a lot of people leave comments, or I've heard people say things to the effect of that is an old view of how things can work, but that just is not something that can happen anymore in this day and age because either wages are down, expenses are up, what have you. And I would disagree. Not only am I a stay-at-home mom from somebody who does not have an advanced degree, but also, I believe that there's a whole lot of factors that I'm going to get into where people are veering off and then they look at their current situation and say, this is impossible. And I will say with this video, do not hear me saying, have some legalistic approach to the man has to make all the money and you have to immediately stay home with your kids full time or, and not make any side income if you're a woman and if you don't, follow that exactly, that's bad. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I think we can view this differently and identify some things that can help us. So then if you do believe that it's worth it, like you can, what my encouragement would be is that people would really evaluate this and this decision themselves. And even if you don't have a child right now, I'm going to get into it, like planning is huge. So if you want to get there and you believe that first before you even evaluate if it's a good idea or not, you're not going to go there if you don't believe it's even possible. But once you go there and say, you know what, it is possible, then you can start planning for it and you're much more likely to be able to do it or at least get to something that is closer to having somebody do that versus the feminist view of both man and woman should be total career people and this child is this like little side project. And that is just not what they need. But this video isn't about so much why as much as how to do this. So let's get into it. Really, this comes down to priorities and choices. So I wrote down a couple things. I'm going to get into 3 specific items, but just some things to remember is you can do basically anything if you're committed enough to it. Maybe you don't decide it's worth it, but either way, don't say it's because it's impossible. So things that I could be talking about are maybe you need to move closer to your family so that, a grandparent can watch your kids and the wife makes a little bit of money to make it possible to basically have her stay at home. Or maybe have a smaller or less expensive home. I mean, that's a very dramatic, huge change in your life. Maybe that wouldn't even help you financially. That could be a situation as well. Maybe what you need to do is you need to literally move to a place that has a lower cost of living. Places like Oklahoma or like Waco, Texas are really way less expensive. Like our house, if we're in San Francisco, this would probably be like a $5 million house or something like that. It's crazy how drastic prices can be depending on where you are or how close you are to the city. And if you have to evaluate like what your skills are, what jobs you can get, and maybe that is something that would actually be a viable idea for you is to literally move, to put yourself in a significantly different financial situation. Just lifestyle. I mean, I'll be talking about that more, but sometimes there's this tendency of all humans to be kind of envious and greedy and compare, and we tend to compare up. So I tend to compare up to people that are a bit wealthier than I am, and then sometimes can feel less than or like, oh, I'm so poor. Then my parents, who are much richer than me and my husband are, they sometimes compare to other people that are at this whole other level of wealth. And sometimes we just tend to do this. And so it's not always about, are you buying a $50,000 car or whatever? Sometimes it's like you may think that you're doing everything super frugal and then you find out, okay, so maybe I get my clothes at Ross, but you know what, this other person, they get their clothes at a thrift store where they make their own clothes. And you may get to a point where you're like, I don't want to do that. I would rather figure out a way to just make more money than make my own laundry detergent. That could be, but like, let's have a perspective check and know that there is a difference and there are options. When I was in counseling, she'd always talk about, you do have options. I'd be like, oh, but no good ones. It's like, because my current situation was that good that any of the other things weren't that good. That was in relation to my career, but God worked that out, got me laid off, where I'm now staying at home with my children. The three main points, though, I want to make are the first key to making this possible to have somebody stay at home is to plan for it. And this really starts well before you get married. And of course, having a child out of your plan, out of wedlock, like, is not going to help your cause. And I'm not going to find the link probably, but you can probably find it, where it's like there's 3 things people can do in America to make sure they don't end in poverty, or it's like a 95% chance. And it's like, finish high school, get a job, and don't have a child out of wedlock. So anyway, that's not helpful if you start having children way prior to when you really had planned for it. Although I do encourage people to not get too like having to control everything, like do release some, like to God, but so you also want to be prudent. So anyway, just pray through how you can be aligned in that in your own life. It starts way early. So with the woman's career, we'll talk about that first. I am such a believer in entrepreneurship for women. And it's not something that I had wanted that and wanted to be that kind of person, but I didn't really pursue that until I was pregnant with my first child. But had I been in high school even, developing those skills and the mindset and all that's required about that, like, I could have built up a business before I had a child. But it was quite the process to get to where I feel like I probably could build something if I really had the time and energy to do so. So anyway, I think that's a great choice. Or there's just a lot of other things that offer. The biggest thing for women, if you want to stay home, is to have something that's really flexible. And that you can do from home, and that you can control your hours and you can control your pay. And that is just huge. And if you already have that set up, it won't be a hard transition to say, okay, well, I have this online business. Now I had a child. We're now going to maybe delegate some things, hire VAs, whatever you need to do to keep your business going. But you're going to reduce your hours, and you can do so. And you can make more money per hour because of what you've already built up. That's something to really keep in mind, but also just other things that can go part-time. I mean, a lot of women do go into like education and teaching because it kind of follows the school schedule, but nevertheless, though, that can still be tricky if you want to be home like full-time, being able to breastfeed them, like not leaving for 8 hours or whatever. That occupation can still be hard, but maybe you could figure out a way to make some money off of those skills. The man's career choice. So if you're a man and you're like, I want to get married to a woman and be the provider and have her be able to stay at home, I mean, you have to think not just, is this a full-time job so that I don't have to say I don't have a job, or, is it enough money to move out of my parents? It's like, you have to kind of expand that and really think in the long term, like, can I support a family with this? And be planning for that and making those decisions then. This is something that is a bit unfortunate in my journey with me and my husband, is that we had planned for me to stay home because we didn't see a difference between which one of us stayed home. And honestly, I was not a super kid person. I never babysat a lot, so I kind of honestly thought like I wouldn't want to be at home. I'm so different now than I ever thought I'd be. But anyway, so I mean, that affected my husband's career choices. I really think he would have made some different choices had he thought, I'm going to be providing, but it was like, oh, well, she's going to be providing because she has a more lucrative career. So there we go. So I'm just going to be making some money before we have kids, because he was adamant about somebody staying home. So prudent pre-marriage financial choices it is so sad when you just hear about all these instances of this extreme student debt, not just from kids going to college, but from spending way too much. And people in kind of privileged America have this mentality that it is almost like entitled that you should, be able to go to a restaurant, a couple times a month and go get fast food all the time and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, we don't realize that is not throughout the course of humanity, like normal to be able to do. Like those are the actions of very wealthy people, but it's totally normal in college. And you'd feel super weird to be like, no, like I'm saving money, but it's like everybody else is doing it because a lot of people are putting on a credit card or they're racking up student debt or whatever. And I mean, I just remember my mom talking about when they were in college, they'd like search a car for a quarter to go to Taco Bell. And that's just not what I experienced. And people joke about poor college students. I always kind of complain about this. I think college students should act more poor because they are poor. You should be like, that should be like the lowest lifestyle you ever experience, but it's at a very high level that is, a lot of times people can't really afford it. And I think that's sad. And it's hard to stand out in your frugality and really make those choices when hardly anybody else is doing it. But it's like people talk about poor college students eating ramen. I don't know. I think they're spending hundreds of dollars every weekend going to the bar, and I wasn't doing that, but like, was I going to IHOP? Yes, I was. I was doing these things and I was saving money and I had a bunch of money saved for our honeymoon and stuff, but like, I could have been way cheaper and it would have been easier to have slowly increased my lifestyle versus not. So anyway, and then this is probably one of the best pieces of advice that we received financially, and that was from my husband's parents, who said to live off of one income and save the rest. So the idea is you don't have your lifestyle way up here and then all of a sudden you have to like way lower it. It's like you live the way you would have to live from the beginning. And then not only are you saving a huge amount of money, but you are containing your lifestyle. But then when you have kids and you really do lose an income and you really do have to live off of one income, you still have to tighten even more than that because then you have the added expenses of kids. But then that's where we will get to the next one, which is frugality, which I touched on as far as before marriage and before you have the kids, but after you have the kids. Something that we do that is not always the most fun is cloth diapers. And that, it's gross, but it's like you just kind of get used to it, but it saves so much money, and that's like another one of those things. It's like, if your budget, you have to decide your priorities, like, can you get over dealing with the poop or can you not? But if you cannot, and that pushes you over the edge of whether you have to go back to work or not, like, you have to kind of assess, is that really my decision? But I don't think people see it that way, really. And I don't think many people really consider cloth diapers that seriously. It's just kind of like, oh, I wouldn't want to do that. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, I prefer not to either. But also it's a lot better for the environment. Not that I'm super eco-friendly girl, but like, it is pretty crazy how many diapers they go through. Another thing is with the kids' clothes. If you have parents, like grandparents who are getting involved, just kind of accept, like, maybe I am not going to do a bunch of shopping for my own child, but then maybe when I'm a grandparent, I will spoil, my grandchild with the clothes that I like, and whatnot. And so, there's that. Also, there's so many ways of getting cheap clothes off of Craigslist or off of Facebook groups where moms are selling stuff, garage sales, your friends. Very often, especially with baby clothes, you can get like a bunch for not very much. And I honestly, even going to like Goodwill or something can add up, but like, especially at a garage sale or really from friends giving clothes away or whatever, if you can get some stacks from people to get most of your items, that you can almost spend nothing. And then same thing with toys. If you kind of rely on grandparents and hand-me-downs and whatever, you can spend next to nothing on toys, especially for the first like 18 months of their life. And then if you're breastfeeding, you for 6 months, like that is no extra money. That's maybe extra calories for you, but if you're trying to lose baby weight, technically, like, don't eat the extra calories and then lose your weight or whatever. Which I know that's a whole different topic and much easier said than done. So those are just some frugality ideas for children to keep the expenses low. Another thing is I will link a blog post I made on Minds about this, but Christian Healthcare Ministries has been huge for our family for saving money with health insurance. Because it's not technically insurance, but it is a cost sharing deal. And we spend $280 for the 4 of us a month. And I know people who spend over $1,000 a month. Now, we do have to pay for our well visits, which are like $75. And as adults, like, we don't really do those, but whatever, the kids, once they get over a year, it's just like one time a year. So yeah, that's a little bit more, but like, to save $700 a month on premiums, but then sometimes have to pay an extra $100, like, and then they have a situation where you can pay a little bit extra like each quarter to have total full unlimited coverage. Coverage is called Brother's Keeper, and it's really cool because it helps your fellow brothers and sisters in Christ who have really excessive burdens in their health care that got above the maximums for their for how much they were giving towards this cost sharing program. But if you're a Brother's Keeper, it will be unlimited. But then what they do is charge you each quarter. Basically, they divide the total amount that they paid out through that program by how many people are in it. And then they just bill you for that. And then that ends up being maybe an extra $20 a month for our family, for us to all have that. But I think that's worth it because I feel like, one, that's helping other people, other brothers and sisters in Christ who have those kind of extreme financial situations. But then also we are covered. So like if I get cancer and it's horrendous, my family's not going to be ruined financially, which is a really, really good feeling to have, to know that we have that kind of security. So then my third point about making this possible is making extra income. And this is where that kind of mother's career kind of comes in, where the mom can maybe have a little bit of a side hustle. It can be a bit of a balance. It can be kind of hard. Sometimes us women like to try to take over and go crazy and get ambitious, but to try to keep the focus of my primary is my family, as far as how the time during the day. I mean, God first, but like your primary role as in work in your day-to-day business is your family, but then try to add in a little bit extra. That can be super helpful, because if expenses are basically covered by the main income, then an extra even $100 a month can make a big difference, either so that you can save to kind of just cover like annoying little things that come up, like our fence just like blew over, or to give your just more breathing room or vacations or whatever. Extra money, once everything is already covered, is like fun money, and it is fantastic. My encouragement is to try to not live off of that, where you have to keep your side hustle up, but just see it as like this kind of like cherry on top of the cake kind of thing. And then also the husband, the man, can have a side hustle as well, potentially. And this is something that my husband did start doing because, I mean, it is just tough and we want to have more kids. And so it's whatever, it's just a little bit tricky to work it out. So I'm not going to say it's just easy to live off of one income. It's not. There's a lot of sacrifice. So he started doing that and driving like Lyft and Uber, and he messed with like Postmates and Instacart, and there's like a million apps with different things you can do. But then sometimes it can flow both ways, where like today I actually drove Lyft for the first time because they have a referral program going on. I believe it's like you have to get approved before the end of the year, 2018, to be able to make an extra $500, where you basically get an extra $2.50 per ride up to $500 for your first 60 days of joining before the end of this year. And so he basically referred me so I can get that bonus, but then he also gets the same bonus for referring me. So we're getting like $5 extra a ride if I do it versus him. And this is one of those situations where you don't want to get too like rigid and the man must provide, because it's like, well, it's a lot more lucrative when we're getting an extra $5 a ride if I'm the one doing it. And then he can then balance it out and keep things equitable where he helps more at home. And then that also gives me a break, and it is kind of nice because I'm an extrovert. So it's kind of nice to like talk to people that are not 3 years old. So hopefully this was helpful to you to just see that it is possible to live off of one income. But it does require a lot of sacrifice and a lot of changes and potentially drastic changes to your life. And my encouragement to people is to really share the word about why it would be important to have somebody raising the children and not trying to outsource and delegate parenting. Because ultimately that will affect people's decisions. But the sooner people know this and think about this and plan for it, the better off they'll be. It's very tricky for people if that was totally not on their minds, and then all of a sudden they find themselves with a child and a lot of debt, and now are hearing the message. You know, it's like you have to kind of like backtrack, and it's just much harder to do it that way. But then this is also why sometimes I do go in a very controversial direction of like not being a huge fan of women going to college, because that is just that much more debt, makes it that much more hard for them to stay at home with children. And I do believe in the idea of sequencing, where a woman can, you know, I still say that it'd be fantastic to like build a business or do something, have something where you are making some money before you have children, but basically try to have the children early. And then after the children are a little bit older, or after they're out of the house, whatever, then have your career. Because there is pretty much enough time to do that. But investing tens of thousands of dollars in your career and then working for a couple years and then quitting for 15 years and then going back to work, like that's not going to get you anywhere. That's, I think Stefan Molyneux called that a career sandwich. This is like career, this big block, and then that. This channel is here to share liberating truth to help you break free from feminism. So if that's the kind of thing you want to hear about, dating, relationships, family are pretty much the main areas. And then sometimes some things about like rape culture or whatever, other feminist things, obesity promotion. I'll share about that as well. Subscribe to this channel. If you like this video, then like it, and always leave comments. I would love to hear from you. Do you agree with me that it is possible, or do you disagree? Why? Let me know. And then also I'd like to know, do you think it's worth it? Why or why not? That's probably a separate video I'd need to make. So I will talk to you all later.